responsibility really to sustain this renewable energy society that we have already created. And it is our role as well to contract and conduct research in areas that the state is still that the state still owns. Now we accumulate and maintain databases on the energy resources and utilization, and administer really all other energy affairs. So, does anybody know where this is? This is Þvottalaugar, or the washing springs in Reykjavik. Depicts women washing clothes, which is really the first use of geothermal energy in Iceland. Now, in the 1950s, the equipment to utilize oil for heating was improved, obviously leading to increased consumption. As a result, coal was practically eliminated from space heating in Iceland about 1960. So we started with peat, sheep dung, went to coal, went to oil, and then gradually started to use geothermal, which outpaced the oil consumption for space heating, that's to say. So for the first 1,000 years, the primary use of geothermal heat was washing, bathing, and cooking. And in 1908, a farmer led a pipe to his house for house heating. This was not an invention per se in Iceland. This technology had been known for quite a while in the US and France, but we didn't have really the steel pipes to do this until 1908. Now, 2 decades later, an extensive distribution system was installed in Reykjavik when a 3-kilometer long pipeline was built to transport the hot water to 2 primary schools, a swimming hall, and a main hospital. And about a decade later, a major step was reached when we planted an 18-kilometer long pipeline from a nearby system, low temperature system, to Reykjavik. And here you can see the front page of Morgunblaðið. On the upper picture you see the black smoke looming over the city, and then on the lower picture you see the clean city of Reykjavik as promised by this political party. So this was something that actually happened. In terms of electrification, the first hydropower turbine began operation in 1904. 3 decades later, we had 38 power stations with an installed capacity of about 5 megawatts, which is quite small. And during the following decades, increased electrification and development of the distribution system took place in the urban areas. And by 1984, the electricity supply system was connected to a central grid. So we didn't have any more these isolated distribution systems. Now this is quite important for the buyer of electricity, because you don't experience as much outages. So in terms of SAIDI hours, which I'm not sure you are familiar with, it is a measure of the number of hours of outages that the user has to bear with. In Iceland, that is very low and just measured in a couple of minutes. And it is actually really just one area that is experiencing this, maybe once a year or so, and that is the Westfjords over here, because they only have one transmission line. So if you have some problems or etc., they might experience outages. Now in 1953, The state fertilizer plant kicked off the power-intensive industry in Iceland. And then the Búrfell hydroelectric plant began in operation in 1965. And by 1972, the first glacial river power plant in Iceland was fully operational. That was a major step for us because we were not sure whether or not a glacial river could be harnessed in such a way. But that has actually shown to be quite profitable. And here you can see on this picture the aluminum smelter that you pass on the way from the airport. Did you see that one? Those red and white silos that you pass, yeah. Yeah. So, but after 1995 or so, further installments have simply been for the power-intensive industry. So we're way past the public consumption of electricity. So this is quite a unique situation in terms of other countries. So that the developer of the energy developer has to find a match, has to find a buyer of the electricity. So he has to go out and find a buyer and sign a power purchase agreement or PPA with that buyer, because he's not just expanding to sell to a distributor that already has a buyer in place. Now, the oil crisis struck the world in the 1970s, fueled by the Arab-Israeli War in 1973 and the Iranian Revolution in 1979. And this really caused a rapid speed up in geothermal development in Iceland. It might be too strong to say, as I say here, that it changed the national policy. That might be too political, but it did speed up the development. It was about 55%, whereas geothermal about 43% or so. But just in 2 decades or so, we almost outphased oil consumption for space heating completely. And today, the electricity generated is completely by renewable energy resources. So you only have less than 1% of the houses heated with oil. Now, okay, you could say that, of course, Iceland has abundant resources of energy. So maybe this was an easy transition for us. But there are a number of other countries in the world that could have done the same. Here you see a term called primary energy. Are you familiar with that? So primary energy is energy that hasn't gone through some transition. So it's a measure of how much energy you're really taking from Earth or from the natural environment. Here you see it in petajoules, and a peta is in 10 to the 15th. So it's quite a large number. Do you know the primary energy consumption or primary energy use of the world? It's 500 exajoules. And the exa is in the power of 18th. Okay, so just get a, so this is less than a promille or, yeah, of that. Now, so here you can see from 1940 to 2008, the primary energy use in Iceland. You can see the use of coal here for house heating, replaced with oil